following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl, Hentz, and Dan Rylance here, and very pleased to be joined this evening. This show will be split in two. We're talking with Oshkosh Mayor Frank Tower in the second half about his re-election bid, and right now, though, we're very pleased to welcome two gentlemen here to the show who have not been on in the past. We're going to be talking about beach water testing and monitoring with respect to this particular show down at Menominee Park in Oshkosh. So here to talk about that issue with us is Greg Kleinheinz. He is to my left, and Greg is an associate professor of microbiology at UW-Oshkosh.
Yeah,
thank you for being here. And seated next to him is Justin Mitchell. Justin is, you're on the Environmental and Energy Board in town, correct?
Yep, I am
Okay.
I am on that board. This actually isn't a component of that.
Right, but that's just kind of for a
Yep.
point of reference.
Absolutely.
You're on there, so environmental issues are of major concern to you. This particular thing came up sort of just kind of by accident, and as I understand it, after the flood last summer, your wife noticed people swimming down at the beach
Sure.
in Menominee Park. And for those who don't know where the beach is, it's clearly marked beach, and it's just a little bit, I guess it would be a little bit east of the Little Oshkosh Playground. So,
Right.
and so tell us how this sort of evolved, Justin. She noticed people swimming there, and she was concerned about that. Why?
Right. Well, we have two kids, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we go through the park on walks 4 to 5 times a week, and we actually utilize the beach. The city does a great job in maintaining the sand and taking care of the beach. And following the flooding, she was going for a walk and noticed maybe 15 or 16 people swimming in the beach, including, moms with young babies and kids and whatnot. And I mean, everything that we had read, indicated that following flooding, there could be, contaminants in the water if, let's say, some municipalities weren't able to process their wastewater appropriately and dump some raw sewage into the water, or, pesticides and things like that can leach over such flooding. And so we had a concern, and she didn't see any sign stating that this beach is closed or don't swim here due to the recent flooding. But if you go to the DNR website or any environmental website, pretty much it would say, don't swim following a flood of that nature. We contacted the city, or she contacted the city, and the health department had indicated that you should not swim there. It's not safe. But they indicated that they don't test, and that there's a sign that says, essentially, swim at your own risk. This isn't supervised. And at a request to test, and they indicated that they don't test. And so following that, we then contacted our county supervisor, who passed it on to Doug Gearin, the director of the county health, and he is very in support of testing. The county tests at numerous sites in Winnebago County, and actually following the flooding, they found at least one site that had E. coli levels that exceeded the EPA standard for healthy water.
Here in the county?
Here in Winnebago County.
Okay.
And he responded to us saying, how can I help? Do you want us to test? What do you want us to do? And he took the steps and the initiative to contact the city and get permission to come in and test the water. And so we had a one-time sample following the flooding, and the water there were no indicators of E. coli exceeding the EPA limit. Following that, though, no continuation of testing. The county operates in the county and the city operates in the city. They don't often mix. And so this is kind of a follow-up of that. I would like to see for the health of my children who utilize the park and the beach, as well as all the other kids and families that utilize that beach. It's a heavily used beach. I'd like to make sure that it's safe when they're using it. The Department of Health, one of their missions is to, and I quote, recreational facilities are monitored to ensure that a safe and healthy recreational environment is provided to all residents and tourists. This is a recreational facility that's heavily used, and back when they put the comprehensive plan together, they did a survey of residents, and respondents indicated that water quality is water quality is critical for the health, business, and recreational opportunities of our community. The Parks Department did, when they were putting together their parks plan, they did a survey of residents, and the fourth most utilized asset of the City of Oshkosh Parks Department is the beach. I mean, you go on a hot day and there can be 100 plus people there at any given time. And so over a course of a day or a week, that's a heavily utilized resource. Even now that we have the water park, it's still heavily utilized. It's important that those people, when they go, they don't have the capacity to test the water. They assume that the water is safe, and if it's not safe, there would be something saying there's raw sewage present, or this water may not be safe due to recent conditions, or something like that.
So you took your concerns, you were actually at a city council meeting at one time. You took your concerns there, and what was the result of your appearance at the council meeting, if anything?
Well, the debate following my presentation, I talked about what we had all went through, and the follow-up discussion at the meeting was we're not sure if it's a beach.
Who questioned whether or not it was a beach? Because there's a sign right there that says beach.
Right. It was a discussion amongst various people. At that time, we had acting city manager John Fitzpatrick. It was right around the transition time.
Okay.
So he was filling in, and that was kind of the discussion. And then the council followed up saying, well, maybe first we need to determine if it's a beach or not. And the only response that I received was a thank you from Councilor Palmieri, thanking me for coming. To my knowledge, it never made it to any advisory board for further overview. No city staff got back to me whatsoever, and this kind of sat there. I had my notes and whatnot, and relatively recently, the League of Women Voters, I guess, has been doing an annual or a year-long study of the Parks Department, and they had left the beach open. Particularly because I had been doing some work on it. And so about 3 weeks ago I got a request for my work, and I didn't have it done. And so I quick put it together, and I put together a formal letter requesting a response from the city if that they implement a beach quality, water quality monitoring program. And if they don't, they cite the reasoning for not providing this community service.
And have you heard anything from them yet?
Well, I sent it to numerous people. I sent it to, I have my list here. I sent it to
8 people.
The city manager. I sent it to the mayor, to the director of the health, the director of parks, people on the various advisory boards. The only response formally that I received is a letter from Dr. Strand indicating she's no longer on the board.
So you've been ignored for the most part by the city?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I haven't received any response. Although, I mean, granted, I did say please respond within 60 days because I understand a lot of stuff has to happen. Ideally, from a community service standpoint, I emailed a copy of this to the director of the county health department, and he got back to me the same day saying, thank you for sending this to me. Great work. Let me know how I can help. I also forwarded it to Greg since I cited Greg in here, and I'd never actually talked with him, and I thought it might be relevant and valuable for him to know, and he got back the same day as well. And again, the only counselor to get back initially was Tony Palmieri, thanking me for the work. And today I did get an email from Brian Bain asking me if any city staff got back to me, and so we're kind of, I haven't gotten any response formally.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, let's all talk to Greg.
Hi, Greg.
let's bring him into the conversation. Now, you and your department do a great deal of testing, do you not?
Yeah, we do. Our group does, we often are called the beach group. We do testing in 11 counties in Wisconsin at over 100 beaches, basically including everything from Manitowoc through Door County and all of the Lake Superior beaches. Eagle River area, the Vilas and Oneida County area, and we actually are the ones that are partnering with the county on the county effort here in Winnebago County. And so, yeah, we've got quite a bit of experience doing this, and in fact, in 2002, in response to some student interest, we did a project at Menominee Park Beach.
Okay.
And so we did do some testing back in 2002 as just for no real reason other than we had student interest in that, and there was some pending legislation in the federal government to do more monitoring on coastal beaches, and we did do that one small project and provided the city with all that information. But yeah, we do. It keeps us pretty busy.
Well, you know, I was looking at some websites, you know, that you had actually referred me to, and I'm seeing beach testing and monitoring information in a lot of different states, and in Wisconsin there are many counties that do it. Winnebago County wasn't even listed there. I mean, it just seems to me it's a good public health thing to do. Is this an expensive thing that some counties feel would be cost prohibitive, or why would someone not want to do this?
Sure. Well, that's always one of the things that are cited for reasons why one would not want to do it. In the case of Menominee Park, the cost is, as far as we would be concerned, is a non-issue. We've offered to partner with the city at no charge to the city and do it as part of our program. I'm a real big believer in the sort of Wisconsin idea as part of the UW system, and our group does that in terms of community outreach. We want to be good partners. We want to be sort of citizens of the community, and so for us that's an important thing. There's a lot of beach monitoring. Wisconsin really, we don't really understand this, but is really in the forefront. We have some of the foremost researchers at the UW Milwaukee and people in Dane County. Our group at Oshkosh, a former Oshkosh grad who's at the University of Minnesota. So there's really sort of a core group of people that are doing some great things. All the coastal counties monitor their beaches. A lot of the inland counties monitor their beaches. And there's a lot of ways to do this that are affordable. And you're right, it's most of the counties look at it as a public health issue, and they're there in sort of the public trust to protect citizens and do what's in their interest. The one thing that often gets lost in this is the economic benefits of doing a lot of this. We think about think about beach monitoring as an environmental issue, and it clearly is. It's an environmental public health issue, and we want to protect the people that use our resources or our beaches. But also, there's an economic impact. If, for example, there's tracking of people and which beach they'll go to depending on how the water quality is as a result of some of the coastal programs, and people will go to places that are monitored because, as was mentioned earlier, if you have children, you want to know where they're going. There's a certain amount of risk when you do anything. You walk across the street or you go wherever you go, but as a parent myself, you try and do things to minimize that risk. And so there are studies that have been done that put dollar figures on good beach water quality, and you don't always make that connection. So there's the public health benefits. There's also potentially an economic benefit, and there's that altruistic benefit as well. It's just sort of the right thing to do, I think, in a lot of cases.
How often would you test the water at the beach if you were going to do it? What would be a reliable number of times you'd do it?
Well, that's a good question, and each beach is a little bit different. Clearly, from a science standpoint, the more data you get, the better.
Sure.
What we found is going several times a week over the course of a year or two, you build up sort of a background of information. Everybody hears about E. coli and it's horrible
Sure.
and rotten, but in fact at beaches, E. coli is actually just an indicator, and the vast majority of E. coli doesn't even make you sick. But what it does is it indicates other things might be in the water at the same time, and those are the things you want to avoid. And so whether it's seagulls or fish or whatever, there's a cycling of E. coli in the environment, so you're never going to get rid of it. And you can't, we've been asking you sterilize your beach and all these things. That won't happen, but what you want to know is what's normal at your beach, and you need some sort of routine set of data to know what's normal, and then you want to be able to detect when it's not normal. And then once you have this sort of baseline of data, so you know what the normal background levels are at your location, you know what's not normal, and that's when you're really concerned.
This is probably what are PCBs, and is that an issue in the lake?
PCBs are polychlorinated biphenyls, and
Glad you said it.
Yeah, they're
Now try spelling it.
yeah, those are things, one, that would not be detected in a routine beach program.
Okay.
They're large molecules that have not been used for a long time. They're insulators. In terms of their water solubility is very low, so in terms of being problematic at this particular beach, that wouldn't be my primary concern.
Okay.
If there was a large industrial site right next to the beach or former contamination that was known, I'd be more concerned, but that
Which
wouldn't-
might be the case on the river going north, right?
that could be a
through Neenah,
concern.
Menashe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
How stable is this area or this lake? I mean, would you see changes, over a year or two that are pretty stable? The condition. Are there other factors that make it change at all?
In
or?
terms of beach water quality?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I mean, the amount of precipitation, we mentioned the flooding,
Okay.
that clearly has things. If there's malfunctions, for example, at the Oshkosh wastewater treatment plant or in Fond du Lac, for example, you never know. There's a bathhouse there. Maybe a pipe breaks underground. In fact, that's happened at several locations. You would never know. But in one particular case, a beach monitoring program detected that, and the city was able to come in and fix it. Otherwise, they really had no idea that was going on. So you see some changes and fluctuations, but generally you have this sort of norm, and you might have a particularly bad year in terms of geese or some other issue, and that happens at many locations. And so those are all things that you factor into this, sort of body of knowledge you gain about it. But really, unless you do any collection of data, you don't know any of those answers, and so you have to start from something.
Spraying of weeds in Miller Bay would be a factor, or too far away?
That wouldn't be a large concern to me as well.
Okay.
If I could just comment,
Absolutely.
the DNR does have a beach monitoring guide, and then the state Department of Health and Family Services actually has an inland beach monitoring guide, and it has sampling recommendations. If it's a high priority beach, you sample at least once a week, or after heavy flooding, heavy rainfall, major pollution, things like that, and they go through the steps exactly what methods they would recommend, and I'm sure that's what you follow for most of your testing.
all the Beach Act beaches, it's EPA funded through the state, and that's all following the guidelines that Justin's mentioning. And a high priority beach, for example, is monitored 4 times a week, medium is twice a week, and low priority is once a week. And it goes based on some input from local officials, municipalities. It's also based on users and population and so forth. So it's really up to the area. Clearly, the more you do it, the better data again you get. If you sample 4 times a week, you have 4 times the data.
What would you recommend, or what would you think, in your best professional estimation, Greg, would be necessary for this particular beach?
Well, I mean, there's clearly politics at play here, and that's beyond me.
Sure.
And at any of these places, coming from somebody who works in environmental public health, I clearly think that adopting a program that's consistent with the other programs that are in the state, and that's one of the things that the DNR and Department of Health and Family Services is trying to get to, so everybody's doing it the same way. Just sampling several times a week, and having the university here is a resource. I mean, we have students that have no end of time on their hands to do things in the summer, and as long as we're out doing other water quality issues, we can get them there collecting all sorts of data. But it's really up to the city if they want to use it. I mean, we can go collect as much data as we want. It's a public beach, but again, we want to be a partner, and we want to be a citizen of the community. It doesn't do us any good to do that without having some buy-in from people. But it would really only take sort of what we've seen as being successful in other communities, several samples a week, and maybe we look at sand, and maybe we look at detracting birds and other things. There's been many locations in the state that have actually looked at the water quality, but then what they do is they go to the next step and they use grant dollars, so they're not municipal dollars, but then they actually come up with re-engineering plans for these locations, and they find several things. That the re-engineering of the beach will not only make the water quality better, so you're doing the right thing from a water resource standpoint, you make a more aesthetically pleasing beach and one that more people want to visit, but you also get rid of a lot of other issues, birds and other things, because the proper design of the beach sort of renaturalizes things and deters them just based on sort of their patterns and movements.
Okay. So you said that you're willing to partner with the city and there's no cost to the city. That's for the gathering of the samples. Is there any cost at any point in this process? Do you test do you analyze the water samplings that you've taken right at the university?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we operate actually 5 state certified laboratories.
Okay.
One of them is at Oshkosh. We have one in Ashland, Eagle River, Manitowoc, and Sturgeon Bay. So we're fully certified by the state to do the analysis. And so we do it right there. We do everything from simple water testing of E. coli to the genetic evaluations of E. coli isolates, so we can, sort of like E. coli paternity testing. You can determine where the E. coli is coming from. So we do everything in between there, from sand to, if people want an idea of the range of things that can be done, not just our group, but we certainly can provide examples of things that our group, in terms of peer-reviewed publications, and those of other groups that we're aware of, because there's certainly a lot of information available. One person in Racine, for example, has worked on her beach for many years, and her beach used to close about 40% of the time. And I don't think at all that that's the case here, but it had some significant issues with stormwater runoff and other things, and she went through this process that I'm describing just briefly, and her beach closed less than 1% of the time last year. And so doing these sort of incremental improvements has really made a difference in that particular location, and there's Door County and other places you could look at as examples of being very progressive.
Okay.
And
All right.
Cheryl, you had asked from a scientific standpoint why you would test, and this isn't just something that I'm concerned about. The city and the community partnered to put together a comprehensive plan. The language, the city already supports testing a beach. Like I said, one of the goals listed in the comprehensive plan is to participate in a local water quality initiative. It's page 182 for people with the plan. In addition, it says under the natural resource goals, quote, monitor beach water and the quality of the lake and implement recommendations to improve the quality of the water. This isn't just something that was, please do this, City of Oshkosh, and they're resistant. The language that they have adopted and that was put together by community members and city staff clearly supports the implementation of a beach monitoring program.
So really, you're just asking them to do what they've already said they
Do.
they do or want to do or advocate doing.
And you have Greg, who's here offering you the
Free
services
services.
of the university for nothing, right?
The county
And the
offered
county too,
to
yeah.
help. Fond du Lac,
Yeah.
the city does it. Fond du Lac, the county does it.
Well, let me ask this, and this may be more of a legal question, and maybe neither of you can answer it. But say the city, for example, resists, and they say, no, we're not interested. Can the county then, because the city is situated in the county, can the county then come in and say, well, we're going to do the testing, especially since it's water that is in Lake Winnebago?
Yeah, well, generally, I'm not a lawyer, of course,
Right.
but given my experience at other municipalities, if there was an imminent public health hazard, of course, the county health officer has a tremendous amount of authority in that regard. I don't think we're at that particular point. It is a public beach. It meets the definition that DNR and EPA sets for a beach,
Yeah,
so it is a
does.
beach. And so any public citizen can go and collect a sample. People could collect them every day or 500 times a day. They have public access to the beach and they can collect the samples. The question is, there's no point in collecting the samples unless you're going to have some sort of public notification program that goes with it. So the goal is to not only notify the public of the potential risk that's there, and you really need the local governing agency to do those sorts of things and come up with sort of a standardized way of alerting the public to what's going on there.
Who owns the water?
That's a public That's the
So-
water is I can't think of the name off the
Yeah.
top of my head, but it is.
But it would be like the state owns the water?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
a public domain. There's actually several places that they have problems with boaters that you have private shoreline and you can park your boat
Okay.
100 feet from the shoreline and have 500 boats, and this has happened, and they can do whatever they want.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
If people, for example, Justin, want to contact you or get involved in this cause, find out more information about it, whatever, how would they go about contacting you?
Sure, a couple things. My letter, as well as references to additional information, I'll post it on your website,
Sure.
as well as maybe mainstreetoshkosh.com. This issue, I hope, will go to the Health Advisory Board for review. So if anybody is interested or supports this, that board needs to hear that you support this. I mean, they've been operating these years without that, and so it's important that they hear residents' ideas. The city manager, obviously, if enough people speak up, I think that it's really easy for a city official to make a decision. It might go to the Parks Board. It might go to even the Energy and Environmental Advisory Board. Contact your city officials, contact your common council. They're there to represent your ideas and your values, and so, contact those individuals. The League of Women Voters, I'm not fully aware of their whole study, but, they did a whole annual, or a year-long park assessment, and this is a part of that, and contact them and see if they have avenues of getting involved. My contact will be on the website, or Main Street Oshkosh, and we may follow up with a forum or some sort of additional education outlet or a talk back, but I think the best avenue is for people to contact their city officials.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Letters to the editor, that's always a good source as well. People read that, and I suspect that the Northwestern may at some point look into this as well. So.
Okay.
Well, I
Good.
think you should be commended for doing this.
Absolutely.
And I've known Justin and his wife Mandy. We were in Vista together back 4 or 5 years ago, and they're determined and they're well informed. And,
All right.
and he'll do a good job on this. I have a lot of respect for him for his tenacity.
Well, good. We'll get that stuff to us. We'll get it on the
Absolutely.
website,
Yeah.
and we'll try and have you guys back
Yeah.
again in the future as this sort of evolves. So, but thanks very much for being here. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Yeah.
We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Oshkosh Mayor Frank Tower talking about his re-election bid, and we just might ask him about this. So we'll be right back.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans, we have canned
beans.
tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah.
mentioned before the break by Oshkosh Mayor Frank Tower. He is seeking his second term as mayor. How many years have you been on the council, Frank?
I served on the council for 4 years as a council member prior. 2 of that was as deputy mayor, and then took a year off and came back and was elected as mayor.
So you're a veteran.
These are 2-year terms for mayor?
2-year terms,
Yep.
because mayor, as far as the state is concerned, is the same as a city council member, so you have a 2-year term.
Okay.
So why are you looking for a re-election here? Why do you want to keep doing this?
I want to keep moving the community forward. I've received a lot of positive feedback about the things that the city has initiated thus far, changes in leadership, greater openness, more trust, and I really want to help make that continue to happen in our community for at least another couple of years.
Okay. Where do you want to start first? The riverfront?
Well, maybe just a couple of general questions. How many hours a week do you log as mayor? And what are the other things you do?
Oh, there's a lot. Usually
Yeah.
it's between 10 and 15 hours a week that I log as mayor. It, of course, is more when we have a council week.
Okay.
But I do everything as varied as talking to kids at various schools, do reading, to meetings, whether they be our economic development partners, other groups. I was at a West Side Association meeting this morning talking about some of the projects that are coming forward, looking forward in the future.
Okay.
We've got the State of the City on Monday that I did some prep work for yesterday, so it's all over the board.
Someone said Frank's sort of a ceremonial mayor because he goes to all these things. What's your annual salary?
Right now it's $3,000.
Okay. Well, I hope people can add that up quickly.
It's less than minimum wage.
Yeah,
We've done the math before.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, you know, you talked about economic development, so let's just jump right into one of the biggest things that has been going on for a number of years, and that's the riverfront development.
Sure, the Marion project.
Yep, we're on our third set of developers now, and they've asked for one delay already. Now they're looking for a delay, I think, until the end of June or until sometime in June, which is longer than the 30-day delay that had originally been
And actually,
floated.
there was a 30, per the negotiation or the contract that we put together, there was 30 days and then an additional 30 days.
Right.
And what we're looking at is an extension past that, which of course requires then to come to the Redevelopment Authority and to the Oshkosh Common Council.
Okay, so I would assume, based on some of your past comments and past votes, you're in favor of that?
I would be in favor. From what I've seen thus far at the RDA, we did not see all of the information, and we'll see more at the council meeting, the second one in March, and then make a final determination. Everything I've seen thus far is very positive, so I suspect I will vote in favor of the extension to take them through the June time frame, but past that I would probably not continue an extension, but knowing the Dumkeys and how honest and upfront they've been in the past, my suspicion is that they will be able to say by that June date, it's a go or a no-go. They're going to be honest with the council and say it's not going to work at this time, or it's going to work great and we won't need to do an extension past the June time frame. It would have to be pretty compelling for me to go past that June date.
Sure. And for those who are kind of wondering, you know, why they're seeking this longer than 30-day delay here, as I understand it, they're looking to put some housing in there where they're trying to get some grant money for the housing. Is that it?
One of the components to the overall project, there are some other reasons they want to be able to flesh out better some of the office space, the retail, and some other parts of the whole development. But one of the things specifically that they're looking at is there's an April date where they need to wait until to see if their WIDA application has been accepted. Everything we heard at the Redevelopment Authority was very positive, and it's a senior type housing complex that would be potentially put in place, not unlike what was originally proposed if we go way back to when it was thought to be the living, learning type community that the university had proposed. So it really harks back to that, which I'm really encouraged about. And so therefore, given that time frame, that April date, that's what takes us past the March where their current extension would take them to. So that's one of the components, not the only one.
Sure.
The fact that they put a hold on the Shopko site, not to go with it right now, do you think that's a harbinger that the Marion Road could end up the same way?
No, because it's a different project, a different format, and really with regard to Shopko, the Dumkeys are ready to go.
I understand.
It's the Shopko folks that are saying essentially, you're the first one on our list once we're ready to go. Of course, I think as I was talking to someone earlier today, when you've got that next number in line, it always seems like that's the longest wait waiting to get up there. So from that perspective, obviously we'd like to see Shopko go sooner, but
retail
two
sales are in the drain. Yeah. You know that, yeah. A couple things on parliamentary. You know, most
Sure.
people view you, and they should, as the parliamentarian of the council. You are the mayor and you run the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions. One
Sure.
is, the meetings are getting longer.
Yes.
And the parts within the meeting are longer. The council member statements have become almost a new ball game.
Yes.
I mean, you know.
Unlike anything I experienced as a council member.
And that's right. They were like, you know, Shirley did her little thing.
Right.
And you know, it was done in 10 minutes. Now we have long speeches, long questions and answers. So that adds something. And then you got workshops sometimes that follow. Does that concern you, and what do you see as ways to change that?
You bet it concerns me. I was actually with the Northwestern earlier today talking
Okay.
to them about the very same topic. And one of the things looking at that has happened is exactly right. Council members speaking a long period of time. We can take a look at the last number of meetings and say, have we had a lot of citizen comment? Sure, we had the meeting where we had a lot of folks concerned about the culling.
Right.
So that's kind of, we take that one out because that
Right.
was the rare case. And one of the things when I was elected that I wanted to stress is we want participation. We want people to come. We want citizen feedback.
Right.
But if you look at the meetings, as you said,
Yeah.
it's not been the citizens that have been the prolonging, it's been the council members.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you deal with
Exactly.
that in a responsible manner? One thing I've always tried to impress upon the council members, because this is something I personally do, is when you come to the council meeting, have all of your questions of staff already answered. Take that time over the weekend. I literally have my list of questions that I start hitting staff with on Monday. And I've tried to impress through orientation, because every new council orientation I attend, so that I can essentially put my arms around the new council members and say, questions, concerns, we're here to make sure the transition is as easy as possible. So what can we do to impress upon council members to continue doing that? And essentially call them the task at the organizational meeting and say, we can't be doing this and continue doing this. The other that I would like to take a look at and put it out for debate at the organizational meeting is a look at, can we separate, not unlike what we've done with the consent agenda, which now the consent agenda passes lickety-split, whether there's a question or there's poll separate vote, they get out there, we get the consent done, and then we move on. So perhaps there's an opportunity to treat the portion of the meeting where council members come back for action in a similar vein, where if there's interaction that needs to happen with staff, and questions come up, someone brings something up as an idea or a question, especially a citizen, we need to respond and get that answered, but have that essentially as one section. So go to the council, do you have questions? We get the questions answered, there may be some staff interaction, and then it's up to me to be fairly straightforward on when I think it's delving into a statement area and say, nope, that's not a question, that's a statement, and then transition to a separate section where I can run through the council and say, does any council member have any statement? And we do have a similar type of rule where if there's a council member statement, it has to be 5 minutes or less, and stick to that, or maybe even give council members, because frankly, we should know the drill, be able to limit it to less than 5, 2 or 3 minutes to do a quick summary. So some of the things, at least at this moment in time, I'm thinking about, assuming success on April 7th, as far as ideas I'm going to put out to the council.
Yeah, it's really tough, I know, to tell a fellow council member that you're you're gone over, but some of them have gone way over.
Oh, no question.
And the questioning, almost like a courtroom, on some of the city officials, it goes on and on and on. That shouldn't be what council member statements are.
Well, and that's why you've got to separate that, and I think just taking a fresh approach to, for at least the first few meetings, let's try an idea of separating out the questions from the statements and see if that works. I think it's going to be really on each council member to realize that, hey, when these meetings go late, when especially there's a workshop or a closed session afterwards, we need to be sharp. I mean, personally, I prepare on a council day so I can go to about 3 a.m. so I can smile and outlast anybody there, so I'm ready to go. But I don't expect that of those that are coming to give statements or be at the workshop, etc.
Okay, last part on this. What do you do with workshops after 4 hours? I mean, should you have them at a different time in the day? I know that's complicated, but you know, these workshops come really late.
The challenge with the workshops, and there are a couple of different ideas. Brian put forward one, could we have it on the first Monday? At that particular point in time, we were doing workshops quite often. We've not had as many workshops, but frankly, workshops are a great way to get some things done, and we have tackled a lot of big things in the last 2 years. So moving it to that first Tuesday was something that council didn't support. I've heard suggestion of, can we have it earlier? So say at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. challenge there is we have Traffic Review Advisory Board Plan Commission, which from a taping or a recording perspective we could do, and then perhaps the workshop is delayed and later heard, because the Plan Commission or Traffic Review would have to be the primary thing that's seen, but we have council members that serve on those boards. So how do we get those council members at the workshop, because you want to have all of the council members at the workshop. So that's where it's a struggle with how do you do it at a different time. And I haven't resolved how we do that. I think.
But you're aware that these are problems. And
no question. I don't. How could anyone not?
Well, for sure. One compliment on the night when all of these people showed up on the deer culling issue. I thought you handled it extremely well.
Well, thank you.
You know, this is not a criticism of Bill Castle, but I could see him clearing that place if there were any applause or any booing, and I thought you set a nice standard. Finally, you gave up on the clapping because you couldn't stop it. But when they started to boo, you said
that was
that's
completely
it,
unacceptable.
and that was the end of it. I thought you handled it very well.
Right. Right, yeah, that was, I mean, we can disagree on items, but we're all citizens in this community and we need to respect each other.
Right. And we're going to talk about the deer culling in just a minute or so, but one of the things, you know, this past fall, winter, whatever you want to call it, the city sent out a survey in water bills, I believe it was. They asked for people's input on rating their concerns in the city. And the citizens, for the most part, who responded said, you know, we're concerned about the roads and we're concerned about sewers, and I'm sure that the sewers probably came as a result of last summer's flooding.
I would think yes. How could it not?
But nonetheless, it's a major concern, and those are the two top priorities that they're worried about, and yet your focus, your main priority, according to your interview with the Northwestern, is public safety.
Well, infrastructure was number 2, or pretty close up there to the top.
Okay. But, you know, why public safety? What's the issue there that's so concerning to you that you put it at the top?
Well, if we can't live in a safe community, everything else really becomes moot, in my opinion. A great example that I use is the war that we're currently in overseas in Iraq. You saw a real rush to get into and essentially secure particular assets in the country. And, you know, we're not going to go into a discussion about the war, but
we don't have time for that.
you saw a situation where there was unrest because there was not that presence of safety and security, and the entire society, to a certain extent, collapsed in that process. So without having that public safety aspect, everything else comes, in my opinion, secondary. So people need to know they live in a safe community, and then infrastructure.
Okay.
But of all of the years to put infrastructure first, it would have been the year of the flood.
Well, I got
and
some
we're nitpicking here, but
sure. I got some ribbing about putting the Grand as the last of my list, given all my passion for the Grand in there, and put the museum ahead. So
yeah. I hear you.
Well, along the lines of public safety, you know, we're taping this on March 5th, and just yesterday we learned, of course, that several communities in northeast Wisconsin are going to be getting some stimulus money. I don't remember the exact amount Oshkosh was getting, but it was, I think, a couple $100,000.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And grants available.
Any ideas? Have you spoken at all with Chief Groyle on what he would like to do with that money? I know they were looking at maybe some equipment issues. But would you concur with that?
Well,
what are your thoughts?
Because it's so recently, now that we know that it's there, I've had a couple of brief exchanges with Chief Groyle, essentially saying, we know this is available, what do we think for priorities? So I'm sure he'll work with Mark and with the council to come forward. One of the things that I know has been on the potential table for a while is some type of camera systems. That's one of the things, whether they be, if you see the city of Appleton, they actually have portable cameras that they can wear on their tie for recording interviews and such, as well as in squad cars. And I think that would go a long way to keep officers safe and secure, as well as provide a certain level of trust to the public. So that might be one thing that I would at least suggest that, hey, we could do this. But I'm sure Scott has a lot of ideas and things that he thinks would be a huge priority, especially with the community policing effort. And there's one thing I cannot stress in the community enough, that community policing effort that he brought forward when he became chief, addressing so many of quality of life issues. It's just a fantastic program, and I want to continue supporting that.
Okay, good. Do we know, are we in line, we probably are in line for some, but do you have any sense of how much money we may potentially be getting for other types of things, like infrastructure?
I know I heard today about some projects with regard to the 41 corridor, the reconstruction that's there that DOT is going to receive. I have not heard any specifics about what may come down to the city specifically, but I'm sure over the next week or two we'll get more information from Mark, or depending upon what we have, we may be able to provide some of that at the State of the City on Monday or at the council meeting on Tuesday.
Okay, all right.
Just to follow up on that.
Sure, yeah, go
Your
ahead.
opponent is raising the issue about the need for the mayor to lobby in Madison. What do you think of that?
Well, I talk to Gordon Hentz, our state representative, all the time. I saw him, in fact, last night at a forum we had on the environment at UW-Oshkosh, along with our new representative in the Senate, Randy Hopper, as well as others. So when I have a concern or a question, I pick up the phone, give him a call, and say this is what we've got for concerns.
Have you ever, as a mayor, gone down to a legislative committee and actually testified?
Not as mayor. I've been down to Madison before testifying when I was part of a couple of different organizations, so I've been in the Capitol. It's one of the most exciting things, I think, just actually being in the middle of the Capitol under the dome, looking up and feeling our society and the democracy.
Sure.
But
Okay, I just,
Sure.
He also says the mayor should be ombudsman. That was a sort of a thing that was around about 20 years ago, where every unit of government should have sort of a person. If you had a complaint or something, you would call the ombudsman. Are you familiar with the term?
I'm not familiar with the term, but trust me, I get lots of phone calls and emails and
so
letters.
You are a de facto ombudsman.
And really, it's an extension of what I saw as a council member, just more as the mayor, because I'm essentially that one party that's the go-to, where a lot of times people call me and they just don't know where to go. And then I can guide them, well, for this you need to get to the city clerk's office, or you need to get to this particular department, and tell them the mayor sent you, if that holds any weight, so that you can get your issue resolved. And then if you have any additional questions, you didn't get it resolved, get back to me and we'll figure out how to make it right.
Role of mayor. You're one of the 7, but you're elected separately as mayor. Do you feel you have more loyalty to support the administration on issues, or more loyalty to stick with your fellow council? How do you balance that?
I don't really feel a loyalty one direction or the other. It's essentially an issue by issue basis. Clearly there's a certain amount of advocacy that I do on behalf of numerous groups, because the mayor is kind of that glue or central conduit between staff. I do put out a Friday letter to all of the council that a lot of the staff receives as well, just so they know what's going on in the mayor's mind, and then work with Mark quite a bit, because that team between, especially in our community with some of the challenges and divisiveness with form of government, I think it's really critical that the mayor and the city manager are that team, and there can be times when it looks like essentially it's the mayor being out there on behalf of the staff, but that's, for me personally, an issue by issue basis.
So you don't see yourself as a defender of the city manager?
Not necessarily.
Now, you did give him the highest grade of anyone who, when you could give grades of him. It was a really high grade. So you obviously think he's doing a good job.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
There are some things that, as I described in that bit of editorializing that I put forth to the Northwestern, that I want to see executed before I could upgrade that, so I'm hopeful for good things.
Okay.
All right. Deer culling. Obviously, this has been a very hot and very passionate issue for people, no matter what side of the fence they're on, or whatever side of the quarry they're on, I guess. But, do you think that the city handled it the best way they can handle it, especially now that we have just learned in the last day or so that the baiting has probably led, at least in part, to the death of at least one of the deer?
I think we took a long period of time to study it, look at it, so I'm comfortable with the process we took. It was a real comprehensive approach. I know there were folks that were involved in some of the initial groupings that weren't sure. Does it make sense to do the culling? Does it not? Is this really the right path to go? And when we looked at all of the possibilities, because clearly there's a problem there. There's an overpopulation of deer. The environment can't support it. So what is the most humane and reasonable thing to do? I would have definitely, especially considering considering the free offer from the gentleman from Pickett, have been in favor of transporting the deer to a different location. The thing to understand with transportation is it isn't just a quick, simple, easy. It is very traumatic for the deer, and there is a certain amount of loss of life that takes place in that process typically. But with the DNR essentially saying that's not an option for you to consider as a city, then in order to reduce that herd, because it's not about managing the herd in a reasonable way, it needs to be reduced. The sharpshooters being brought in were the best solution that I saw to all of the possible ways to go. If we look at other places around the state of Wisconsin, in fact, I think the folks from Urban Wildlife were down in Mequon today, and it was, come in, do their thing, and take care of some of the herd that they have with deer issues down there. And there were other communities that when we had the workshop almost a year ago that were brought out. And I said this at the debate with the Northwestern the other week, I was surprised that we had not a lot of folks come out when we initially started discussing this. That's what I thought would take place, and there was that real delay. It wasn't until we actually were saying, hey, we're ready to bring the sharpshooters, that folks finally got out there and said, hey, we've got a concern about this. I still would have traveled the path that I did, and I think a majority of the council would have given what was presented as possible options for us to handle the concerns.
Are you trying to eliminate the whole herd, though, by giving the sharpshooters, the ability to have 40 tags from the DNR?
Because we didn't know the population, I don't think so. I think trusting them, because this is their business, they know what they're doing. I know that they only took 6 so far because there were other options or possibilities, I believe, to take other deer, but they didn't feel it would be done in a safe manner. And that was one of the biggest concerns I heard from citizens is you've got folks that are shooting rifles that can go a great distance. Any firearm can do that. How are you going to do it safely? So it was impressed upon them, and this is what they do, and they have 100% safety record. So safety has to be stressed with all of that. So I knew from what I'd heard from the chief and from others that they would take a responsible approach to taking the deer that they thought they could, and I was fairly confident they wouldn't take, even if the herd is, say, 40 or 50, whatever it is, that there would be no way for them to take all of them. It just wasn't going to happen from the deer hunting I've done in other situations.
Well, I don't want to spend all that.
Yeah, so from your standpoint, the contract which runs until the end of 2009, you have no reason to alter it, change it, or get out of it.
Correct. Okay. What I anticipate seeing, and we better see, is continued through the summer, is just as we had talked about with the process. It's not just about the culling, it's still about education and looking for alternative plantings, different landscaping. So I'm hopeful that we can bring in the folks from, I think it was the United States Humane Society, once again, so we can do more programming for folks so they can understand what vegetation makes sense. It's not just the culling. We have to do all of these things as a comprehensive approach to deer management there. And not just there. This isn't the only place in our community where there's the potential for overpopulation of an environment with deer. So hopefully we can include more sections of the community in that education process going forward.
Well, along with that then, Frank, as kind of a follow-up, if you're looking to bring in the Humane Society folks again and look at different kinds of plantings and what have you, would it not make sense then to give it a full year to really see how those things sort of work in the whole grand scheme of things before you bring sharpshooters back in?
We're going to have to assess what the population looks like, so I would expect some type of report or update from Chief Groyle and others within our staff to say, here's what we've seen over the summer, do we bring in sharpshooters or do we not? We knew going into this process, especially depending upon how fast the herd multiplied, and we've had a couple of tough winters, so the herd may naturally take itself down, but we knew that there may be the possibility of future cullings as we go forward. All of the communities that had been communicated with essentially said, this isn't something you do once. This is something that's part of a total management process looking forward. It may not be every year, but it may be every 2 years, every 3 years. And so I was understanding of that going in.
We're in a serious recession. You're really the visible leader, I think, of the city as much as the city manager is. What are you hearing about pain, and are there new things or different things the city may have to do in the next year or two to deal with this recession that they haven't done before?
Well, I think one of the big things the city needs to continue concentrating on is economic development. There's no question there. What I'm hearing from folks is they're concerned about losing their jobs, or they've lost their jobs. How are they going to take care of themselves? How are they going to take care of their families? Healthcare is, of course, a concern. When you lose your job, how are you going to have that provided? So those are most of the things I'm hearing, or that the job market is a challenge and slow, and I need to get back into the workforce. So all of those things are what I'm hearing out in the community. The city itself needs to always, whether we're in a recession or not, be very mindful and understand that the dollars that we have, that we use to make city services happen, are tax dollars. They're my dollars, they're your dollars. And I think there's a responsibility, regardless of what our economic environment is, that we always need to be mindful of that and always look for greater efficiencies. How can we do it better? The thing that the city, of course, is under the gun for is the revenue, or the levy limits that we have. And that's always the challenge, at least for the past number of years that I've been on council. That's been essentially the marker that we have to stay within and still continue to provide the services we do in a reasonable way. But at the same time, we have, just as any other organization as large as ours sees, increasing health care costs. With our represented groups, there is an automatic, with the binding arbitration that we go through, we have certain things that we have to deliver on, so that's always a challenge to make that all happen.
Sure. The Parks Department's taking over the Leach for the first time this year, so hopefully that will be a success for them. But you've got a bond to pay off, and you've got money to put into a reserve fund, if you will, to help maintain it. Would you support putting a facility charge on tickets over there?
Potentially. I thought we had already done that when it came to a for-profit group that had passed the council the year I was off of the council. So I thought that that was already in place for a for-profit group. A not-for-profit group coming in would be a different situation. And clearly there's a difference between the community band or the symphony playing there and Waterfest. So I know that.
And Waterfest is a non-profit group, but let's face it, it's the biggest draw that you have there.
At this point in time.
And I don't believe that anybody would not go just because they have to pay an extra 50 cents even.
Well, the challenge is, though, that they are the biggest current supplier of dollars to make that facility work. So it's got to be a balance of what income is already coming in via that organization or any organization, and how would the additional surcharge affect people coming in or attending that event. And
they're not going to not go, Frank. Come on.
Well,
come on. You deal a lot in the arts. Would you not go to a play or a concert or whatever because of an extra, for example, 50 cents?
Personally, I would not, but I can't say that globally for everyone in the community.
I don't think those people would not go just because of an extra 50 cents or even a buck.
She's not going to give up on this.
That's all right. If she did, I would be disappointed.
All right, real quickly, because we're running out of time. The closed session meeting that was recently held. I thought it was a shame that the council kind of got bogged down in basically a semantics issue.
Was a superfluous detail, yes.
Yes. I mean, I understand about goal setting. I also understood, what everybody involved was saying. I was disappointed in your opponent, Mr. Esslinger, and I was disappointed in, Mr. McHugh and Mr. Palmieri for at least not going into the meeting to at least give their evaluation of the city manager. If they felt that it was getting into an area that they were uncomfortable with, that truly got into goal setting for the city as a whole, they could have left.
I believe that was suggested during some of the dialogue.
But that didn't happen, and I was glad to see that you at least made mention of that in your debate with Mr. Esslinger. Now, there are some additional meetings on this issue scheduled?
Correct.
Okay. When are they coming up?
Well, we're going to have in open session on Tuesday, essentially, talk about process. When we got done, or we're in the closed session, one of the things that we were told specifically by our city attorney is process is something that has to be done in open. That's not something that is subject to a closed session. So as soon as we got to that point, we realized, whoop, we've got a full stop here, and we need to do this in open session. So the current proposal that we'll talk about on Tuesday evening is this the process we want to take? And then, assuming there's a positive outcome from the council on that, there would be a couple of closed sessions that would take place the next 2 council meetings.
Okay, great. I was going to give you time to tell people why they should vote for you, but we're out of time, and I'm
no problem.
I'm getting the signal here.
The hook to leave, no
So
problem.
anyway, but thanks very much
Yeah,
for being
thank
here,
you,
and good
Frank.
luck
You
on,
bet.
on April 7th. And that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got All Right on Oshkosh.